Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Anna and I will be moderating today's session. Today our relationship manager, Jerwin Begonia, is going to present standard purchasing reporting. You can type your questions into the question panel on the right side of your screen at any point throughout the session, and we will leave some time at the end of Jerwin to answer those questions. Jerwin, if you are ready, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. So thanks everyone for joining today's webinar. As Anna mentioned, this is part 2 of our sales and purchasing reports. And today we're going to be focusing on purchasing reports. So what are we going to talk about today? All right, so let's go to our next slide here. Okay, so quite a few reports here that we're going to cover. And some of these reports will kind of be familiar to you. There might be a little bit of a refresher for you. And for some of you, you might not have seen these reports at all, especially those that are running an older version of SAP Business One, because some of these reports are new reports and they reflect some of the new functionality in versions 9.1 and higher. So today we'll do a little bit of a refresher on the open items report. A lot of you are very familiar with that already. We're also going to dive into some document draft reports, and we'll look at one of our staple reports, which is the purchase analysis, and we'll slice and dice the purchase analysis based on different selection parameters and different subsets of data. And we'll also look at something new called the purchase request report, as well as the purchase quotation comparison report. So like I said earlier, these two new reports exist in versions 9.1 and higher. We're also going to look at some other reports, purchase order without deposits and purchase orders linked to a deposit. And then we'll do a quick review of the vendor aging report, and then we'll finish off with the blanket agreement fulfillment report. Again, this one might be new to some of you. And finally, what we're going to end off on today is sort of a little bit of a concept on proactive reporting. So I'm going to show you what it means to be a proactive reporter and how to accomplish that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the open items report. So let's go right into SAP. Now I'm running version 9.2 on HANA, so my screen might look a little bit different for some of you SQL users out there running SAP Business One, the Microsoft SQL, but the reports are basically the same. They work the same. So what we're going to look at, if we go into purchasing module and we go down to the purchasing reports module, we're going to start with the open items list. Now, one little tip and trick here is if this is something that you use on a regular basis, this is a report you use every day, you can very simply drag this report into your common function window, so you don't have to keep going through the main module menu to find this report. So we can simply take it and drag it right in here, okay? And now you can see I've got a link to my open items list report, okay? So I can click on this link, and it's going to open up my open items list window. Now, I'm running this by purchase orders, but if you go on the drop-down list, you have a complete list of all your other available documents, open documents, I should say. On the top here, you've got your sales reports. We're not going to focus on any sales AR reports. We're going to look at some of the purchasing reports. So again, you got purchase requests, purchase quotations, purchase orders, goods receipt POs, et cetera, et cetera. So for today's sake, let's look at purchase orders, okay? So what are we looking at here? We have the document number, the vendor code, the vendor name. If they gave you their own order number, like their own vendor reference number, it would show up in here. We've got the due date, and by double clicking on any header here, you can sort the column. So maybe I want to sort by descending order. I want to look at the most recent purchase orders that are open. I can do that by simply double clicking there. Again, any of these fields or any of these columns you can sort by. Maybe I want to sort by the biggest purchase order. I can do that as well. Okay, So you can also play with the different columns that you want to view by simply going up to your form settings up here. And the form settings gives you sort of a preset list of columns that you can show, and you can simply pick and choose. So for example, if I don't care to see the document type, I can uncheck that. And in my window here, I lose that column. And just as easy, I can bring it back by clicking it, and I can see the document type. That also depends on your authorizations. So what you can also do is at the top left here, you can view this report by your currency. So you can do it by local currency, you can do it by system currency, you can do it by BP currency. One thing I will point out, for example, if I do it by BP currency, obviously I have some vendors that are in, local Canadian dollars, some are in euros, some are in US dollars. So at the very bottom here, obviously we can't total the different currencies. So what I like to do is I like to see everything in my local Canadian currency, and then at the bottom, it can sum up all those totals accordingly, okay? One thing you can also do is under your view, you can fit the column width, so you can make sure that all the columns are nicely spaced out. And one of the advantages of using the open items list is that it gives you, a bird's eye view of all your open documents. So for example, if I were to sort this, like again, I'm sorting this by, let's say, some of my oldest purchase orders, and I know that these are purchase orders that are never going to come into fruition. I'm never going to actually purchase these. Well, I could, if I wanted to, I could drill into each PO and manually close it in here, right? Cancel or close that. Or I could do it directly from the open items list. So for example, I can right click and I can cancel that PO, and it's going to remove it from the list. You're going to get a prompt. Do you want to cancel the selected document? Say yes, and it just removes it. So you can do that easily from this screen alone. So that's a nice little feature. You can also filter. So for example, maybe I want to filter my open PO report by a particular vendor. So I say equal to, let's say, this particular vendor here. If you want, you can also do it by the vendor name as well if you wanted to, okay? So let's just filter that, and now I can see all my open POs just for Acme Associates, okay? And so it gives us a nice little subset of data here, okay? And if I want, I can just click on the filter icon again. It's going to bring back all of my results, okay? So a pretty simple report, very handy. So again, some of this might be familiar to you, some of it is just a refresher, and some of you, maybe you've never seen it before, but please take advantage of this very useful report. It's going to save you a lot of time. Okay, so moving on to our next report. We have something called the document drafts report, okay? A lot of people, a lot of customers that I encounter, they're not even taking advantage of using document drafts, and, why would you use a document draft? So a common scenario is, let's say I'm working on a purchase order, and it's a really big purchase order. I'm going to create one for Acme Associates, and let's say, for example, I select, maybe 100 items, so maybe it's a really big PO. And I don't want to have to, rekey all of this information. Maybe I want to resume this draft, a week later. I don't want to lose all the work that I put into this. So I can simply just right click and save it as a draft, okay? And then I can resume work on it later. Also, you can go into File and Save as Draft. That's another way to save it, okay? So let's say I save this draft, okay? And then when I go into my document draft report, I actually have a link to it right here. I can pull up that draft document. Again, you can see here you've got a lot of different options. Obviously, you've got sales draft reports. Maybe you've got quotations and inventory draft reports as well. I am only concerned about my purchasing AP documents. If I want, I can even deselect a lot of these different other options here. Maybe I just want to see the purchase order. Okay, but anyways, let's just keep that, and I can also run it by a particular user. I want to run it based on the manager or myself here. I can choose to see it by only open drafts. A closed draft would be something that's already been either canceled or has been copied to an actual, converted into an actual PO or an actual real document. So let's just click OK, and what you can see here are my different, purchase orders that are saved as drafts. So you see the internal draft number, 9, 12, 15, document type. The purchase number might be a little bit misleading because you see a couple of draft documents with the same number. And that's because when I created that draft, I didn't actually commit that PO number 433 in the system. That's why you see 2 of these at 433. When I actually add it into the system, then it's going to commit that next available number in the system. So you also see your posting date, your vendor code, the vendor name, the total, and again, you can obviously drill back into that quote I just created, or maybe I'll drill into this other one here. Okay, I'll drill into this draft, and if I want to actually convert it into a real purchase order, I just say add. One thing I should also point out is the document draft window will also show any documents that are pending an approval. Because when you send a document for approval, it actually goes into a draft mode. So if there's something waiting to be approved, it's going to show up in here as well. Okay. If I have a draft, for example, the one we just created that I know I'm never going to resume, I just want to get rid of it, I can right click and I can say remove, or I can close it. So what's the difference, you ask, between remove and close? Remove is going to actually delete that draft entirely from the table as if it never existed. Close, however, will close that draft, but you can still search it, and you can still convert that closed draft into an actual PO. Okay, so that's the main difference. So remove just removes it entirely from the system. Okay, so let's do that. Let's actually remove that last one we created because I'm never going to use it. So I say update. Okay, and if I run my draft report again, you'll see it's gone. Okay, and the other one is gone as well because we converted that into a real PO. Okay, so that was an easy one. That was the document drafts. The next one is a purchase analysis. And like I said earlier, this is one of the staple reports in SAP Business One. Everybody should be using this. So let's take a look at it. Okay, I actually have a shortcut to a purchase analysis report. And the purchase analysis window shows up with a bunch of different selection criteria. First thing you should look at are the 3 different tabs. I can do a purchase analysis by vendor, by item, by buyer. Let's start with vendors. So you have some other options here. I can do an annual report, a monthly report, a quarterly report based on some purchasing documents such as an AP invoice, purchase order, goods receipt PO. I can also do it on an individual display or a group display. So what that basically means is if I've created some vendor groups, maybe East Coast vendors, West Coast vendors, etc., I can group all of those in my results. You can also do it by posting date. So if I wanted to, I can run it for my entire history from day 1 to today, or if I want, I can just do it from January 1st, for example, to December 31st, 2016. You also can do it, you can filter your results by vendor. So if you want to run this by a particular vendor, you can do so, or you can run it by a particular vendor group, such as your East Coast, maybe some general suppliers, office suppliers, the West Coast vendors, etc. Okay, so let's do a simple report for now. Let's do an annual report for all my AP invoices from January 1st to December 31st. Okay, so what we can see here is I've got my vendor code, my vendor name. These are the AP invoices for this year. I can see I've got 7 AP invoices for this particular vendor, 5 for this particular vendor. Okay, and again, if I hover my mouse over a particular vendor, I can get some key information about that particular vendor, such as their code, their name, their account balance, etc. I can see for this particular line, for Acme Associates, From January 1st to today, they've purchased we've purchased $32,000 of items from them. Total open is $32,650 as well. So basically what that means is we've got invoices in the system, but they haven't been paid yet. So if you look at line 2 for wax ink, we've purchased a total of $3,110.40, and outstanding yet to be paid is $2,887.65. Okay. Furthermore, if I want to get more granular and get a breakdown of these particular reports, I can double click on these lines. So let's go to Acme Associates. We've got 7 AP invoices in the system for Acme Associates. Well, I want to learn more about those 7 invoices. So I double click on row 1, and here's every single AP invoice. Here's the 7 AP invoices. I can see the sales employee, in this case the buyer, the posting date, the due date, vendor. The purchased amount for that particular AP invoice is $6,000. Applied amount, again, you can see none of these have any applied amounts because we haven't paid any of these amounts for Acme, any of these invoices for Acme. Furthermore, at the bottom, you kind of get a graphical representation of these invoices. This is a bar graph, but I actually like to see a spline graph. I like to see that curve. So I can see that I've got a little bit of a trend in November. I'm buying quite a bit in November. Maybe I can do some further analysis. I can figure out what exactly I'm buying from Acme in November. And now we can start making some important business decisions behind our buying behavior. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to pick up the phone, call our vendor and say, hey, we're purchasing quite a bit from you. Can we negotiate some pricing, some better pricing, etc. So again, the advantage behind this is that you get a real-time representation of your buying habits, and you can start looking at trends and making some important business decisions. Okay? Let's take a look at other ways we can slice and dice these reports. So we'll stick on vendors for now, but let's take a look at maybe a monthly report. We'll still do it for AP invoices. This time, maybe what we'll do is we're going to look all the way back to the beginning of time since we started using SAP Business One. So what we'll do is we'll actually delete that date. We'll keep it blank. So we're looking at from day 1 all the way to today, or December 31st. Let's run it for a monthly report. And now you have it by year, by month. So first you're going to look at, all your years. So 2006 by month, and if I scroll to the right, it breaks it down in 2007, 2008, etc., all the way to 2016. Okay. Again, you can double click on any of these rows to get a further breakdown of some of these buying habits. So for example, I'm looking at all of the AP invoices for Acme Associates from day 1, and I can drill in obviously into any of these documents, get the fine details. Again, you can still go to your form settings, and you can kind of filter out what kind of columns you do or don't want to see. Okay. Again, if you want to see this, in a group display, so again, maybe I have my vendor groups, right? I want to see in a group display instead of individual one vendor at a time. I can do that. So in my group display, what you'll see here is my vendor groups, East Coast, West Coast, my office suppliers, my general suppliers, my machinery suppliers, and that kind of just groups it nicely. Okay. Let's take a look at the Items tab. Now, the Items tab, I find that this is probably one of the more popular tabs that some of my customers use, just mainly because it gives you some secondary selection criteria as well. And so let's look at this. Let's do an annual report for AP invoices. We'll start off with a individual display. We'll do it from the beginning of time to December 31st. Now, for your main selection, you can pick a specific item code if you want to run this report by. You can do it by a particular item group, Maybe I only want to see my JB printer item group, the results from my JB printers. You can also filter it by properties as well. So if you're using item properties, which are just basically some identifiers at the item level, you can filter it by that as well. Okay. So secondary selection here, you can now combine your results or your parameters with some vendor criteria here. So maybe I only want to know my results by a particular vendor. Let's say, for example, we're going to do it from Acme to Acme. Okay. Now you can display it in system currency if you want. You can include an inactive buyer. In this case, we'll just leave those unchecked. Okay. So because I've filtered it down, I'm only looking at this particular item group for all my JB Office printers. So I've got 3 items that belong to that item group. I can see the quantities for how much I've been invoiced by this vendor, quantity of 468, and the dollar amount $179,262.50, etc. Okay. So again, if I want, I can double click on that row and get the details. So I can see I've got about 20 AP invoices in the system for this particular item, and you can look at all the different prices. So you can see, as time went on, prices have dropped, probably because we got a better relationship with our vendor, etc. Okay, and again, you can start to see these trends in a bar graph format. Let's look at the spline graph because I like to see the curves. So you can start to see that there's some trends in February, and then again it dips down in the summertime, but then it goes back up during maybe back to school season around September, October, etc. So you can start to see these buying trends here. And finally, let's take a look at the buyer tab. Now we can do a purchase analysis by a particular buyer in your company. So for example, I want to do it based on, let's say, Derwin, myself. From Derwin to Derwin. Okay. And I want to do it all based on AP invoices. I want to see an annual report from this time. I just want to do it for 2016. So I'm going to say from January 1 to December 31st. I say OK. And Derwin has 7 AP invoices in the system, totaling $32,650 that have been paid yet. I can double click on that row and I can get the details. So I can see each of those 7 invoices. And again, for Derwin, I see there's a buying trend, a spike in just November. And so maybe I need to figure out why the sudden increase in buying in November. So I can talk to Derwin about that, figure out that particular trend. Okay, so in a snapshot, this is, it looks like there's just 3 main reports, by vendor, by item, by buyer. But in reality, depending on your selection criteria, you really have a large amount of options, a plethora of different options and possible results. So it really looks like 3 main reports, but it's really an endless number of reports here, depending on your selection criteria. Okay, so a really, really important tool for purchase analysis, and hopefully you're all using that. Okay, so what are we going to look at next? Purchase request report. So this is a new feature. So again, 9.1, 9.2, you've got a new module called the purchase request document. So let's go into SAP. Let's just look at that real quick. So you can see in your menu here, you've got something called purchase request. Let's look at our pre-baked one that I did. So what's a purchase request to begin with? A purchase request is really a request that's coming internally from an employee. I'm an employee, my laptop is broken, I need to make a request for a new laptop to my manager. So I go into SAP, I create a purchase request. So what happens is, in this case, it's a printer. My printer is broken. I've made a request to my manager, and what happens is I put in, my information will automatically come up here as soon as because it knows who I'm logged in as. Second, I just type in the item that I want, okay? And what's going to happen is, once I click on add, once I add this purchase request into the system, it goes automatically into an approval procedure. So if I'm the manager, I'm going to see in my inbox a request. So if I double click on that, I can see, let me just make this bigger, I can see that there is a request for a new printer. You can put the comment from the user was, please approve new printer. You can drill, the authorizer can drill into this, and then what he can do, or what she can do is she can actually approve it, okay, and put a remark in. So for example, it was approved, and the next step was, please create a purchase quotation to Acme, one of the vendors, okay. So it's a nice way to internally track requests by your staff, okay. So that's what a purchase request is. So the report behind that is this. So I have a purchase request report. I have some selection criteria here. If it's an item or service request, you can stipulate that here. You can filter it by, the code, for example, by item codes. You can filter it by preferred vendors, etc. You can even filter it by the user that made the request, by branches, departments, projects. You can also do it by open purchase requests only, because I don't really care to see what requests have been closed or canceled or approved. I just want to see the open ones. So if I say okay here, I can see I've got one open purchase request. It was for that JB Office printer that we looked at earlier. Okay, and so this purchase request report, the user or even the manager can go in from here and take this purchase request and create a purchase quotation or a purchase order directly from the purchase request report. But let's kind of backtrack a bit. Let's take a look at the information we're looking at here. So what we see here is the item code, the BP catalog number, which is just that could be the vendor's own part number, the item description, the vendor code, the vendor name. We can drill into the original purchase request number. That's the one we looked at earlier. Okay. There's a target price that you're hoping to target, maybe at $300 or whatever it is. You can put that in there. Any possible discounts, you can put that in there. Okay. Some other stuff in here, kind of not really relevant, but like the length, width, height, volume, you don't really need that. But just, you can also hide some of certain columns that you don't really need to see. So a lot of these things you can just simply uncheck here. Okay. So again, you can play around with the output or the view. Okay. I can also change this vendor. So for example, let's say I also want to do it by make a purchase request based on a different vendor. Maybe it's LaserCom. I can select LaserCom. And if I want, I can create a purchase quotation. You're going to get a warning here. A number of documents will be created automatically. It's irreversible. Do you want to continue? Say yes. Okay, in this case, I'm going to say yes. So it's going to create a purchase quotation. Again, another new document in version 9.1. So what's a purchase quotation? A purchase quotation really is just a request for a price from a vendor, really. Let's say I want to go to tender, and for this particular printer, I want to invite 3 vendors to basically bid, and whoever gives me the best price is who I'm going to go with, and I can create quotations to each vendor. But we'll get into more of that a little bit in a second. So I've created my purchase quote. Okay, so really the next thing is I want to look at my, I want to compare those different quotes from my different vendors. So I look at my purchase quotation comparison report. In other words, what is each vendor quoting me? Who's giving me the best price? So I can open this up. Again, you have selection parameters here. In this case, I'm just going to leave it blank. And I can see I've got 3 quotes in the system to 3 different vendors. That last one we created was for laser comp. So let's pretend I've sent them a purchase request. If they've come back, if they've said that their best price is, you know, $250, right? So what I can do is, if I want, I can go into this purchase quotation and I can record the price that they've given back to me. They're saying, we're going to give it to you for $250. Okay. So I update my purchase quotation document and I update that. So I've created a purchase quotation, a new one. I've updated it with some pricing. In this case, it didn't update here, but you can see I've got 2 other purchase quotes from vendors. One's for $200 US. So in local currency, you have $270. And I've also got another purchase quote from Acme Associates for $275 Canadian. So it's only a $5 difference, but I'm going to go with the Canadian one. So what I can do is I can click on that row and I can actually convert this to a purchase order. And if I create it or convert that to a purchase order, it's going to ask me if I want to close out these other purchase quotations as well. Okay, so they don't remain open. It's a little nice feature. So I'll just say yes. Okay, and what's happened is it's created a PO in the background. So I will probably get I should get an alert here. So what happens is the system will create an alert to the original user who created that request in the first place. And it's going to say that PO has been created or converted into, that purchase request has been converted into a PO. So we'll take a look at that PO. As you can see, here it is. And you can also see in the remarks that it's been linked to purchase quotation 9, purchase quotation 10. And as you can see here in my message alerts overview, I've got an alert telling me that it's been successfully copied to a purchase order. So it's a nice way to have complete visibility within your organization. I know exactly, whether or not this has been approved, and then subsequently if that PO has been created for this particular printer, and now I know, it's coming in-house. It's on its way. Okay. Even if I copy this to because receipt PO, the nice thing about this is that the system will also send me an alert, letting me know that it's actually been received at my facility or at my office. Okay. Okay. So that's some new functionality in SAP with respect to purchase requests and purchase quotations. The next report is the blanket agreement fulfillment report. So again, a lot of you who have older versions may not see this report or have the blanket agreement functionality altogether. But for those of you who do and are curious, how it works is basically when I have a blanket agreement, which is basically an agreement for pricing, maybe it's based on monetary value, maybe it's based on total quantities agreed upon with my vendor. It's an agreement between me and my vendor that says, hey, I promise to purchase X amount of quantities from you for this particular item. So I have a blanket agreement with Acme. These are the 3 items that I have agreed to purchase from Acme, and I have agreed to purchase approximately 100 of these particular printers, and they've agreed to give me this particular price. Okay? So when I run my purchase blanket agreement report, I can actually do it here. I've got a shortcut to it as well. Okay. Again, you've got some filter criteria here. In this case, I want to run it for Acme I want to run it just for them because I've got a special blanket agreement with them. So I run it for them, and within this report, I can see the agreement number, BP code, BP name, the start and end date of that agreement. Okay, so it ends, actually, it terminates on December 31st, 2016. The fulfillment status, it's not been fully fulfilled yet because I have originally agreed to purchase 100 of each of these items, but so far my cumulative quantities up to date is 58 for this particular printer. I've purchased 56 of this particular printer and 56 of this particular printer. So these are my open quantities. So as I keep purchasing in real time, this cumulative quantity will increase, this open quantity will decrease until it's been fulfilled, and that fulfilled status will stay fulfilled once it's been finished, or that blanket agreement has been fully fulfilled. Okay, you can also see the cumulative amount and the open amounts as well. Okay, so that's a blanket agreement in a nutshell. And again, you can always go back into the agreement itself if you want to go back to the original agreement and get the details. You can also see within the blanket agreement all the different documents that have been transacted against. So for example, I've got, purchase quotations, I've got AP invoices, goods receipt POs, purchase orders in the system that all relate to this, to those three items on this particular blanket agreement. Okay, it all tells me, the prices that were paid and the quantities as well. Okay. Purchase order without deposit. So as some of you probably know, you can create a purchase order with a deposit against it. So let's see if I've got one in the system. I believe I do. Sorry, let's go to report. So obviously a purchase order without deposit, this report's going to spit out every single PO in the system where there's no deposit. What I really want to know is what purchase orders do I have that are linked to a deposit? So I can see that there is actually one PO in the system that has a deposit against it. Okay, so I can see for Acme Associates, purchase order number 28, the total PO was for $226, and there's been a deposit for $26 against that particular PO. Okay, so it's just a very simple report. It's a way to track, what open deposits you have against POs. Okay. And this is obviously an important one, vendor aging reports. Now, I'm assuming everyone's using this, but we'll just take a quick refresher look at this. So I've got a shortcut to it over here. So again, my vendor aging report, I can do it by vendor, I can group it by vendor, group it by buyer. I can do it for a particular vendor code, or I can do it for all of them. In this case, let's do it for all of them. Now, if I want to do it, break it down even further by vendor group, for example, my East Coast, my West Coast vendors, I can do that as well. In this case, I'm going to do it for all my vendors. And my interval days, so aging date as of today, for example, let's change that to today's date. November 16, and then I can do it in buckets of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and 120 days. You also have some other criteria here. So you want to do it from posting date, let's say from, let's do it from maybe the start of time to today. You can also have other, one of the popular ones is display reconciled transactions. Some people want to see what's been reconciled, and they want to ignore any future remittances. So for example, if there's something that's to be paid in the future, well, I kind of want to ignore that. I want to exclude that from my results. Let's take a look at this report. So I run it for all my vendors, and I can see my vendor code, my vendor name. Okay, I can see the type. Usually an AP invoice could be a credit note in there. Sometimes there's a journal entry. like an opening balance. I can see the posting date, the due date, right? I can see I've got quite a few invoices that I haven't paid since 2012. Shame on me. And I can see the total balances due, if there's any future remittance. And then, like I said earlier, you can see the bucket. So 0 to 30 days. For Acme, I've got, $621.50 outstanding. Nothing. 31 and 60-day bucket, 61 90-day bucket, or 91 120 bucket. I'm clear, but I've got $8,433.19 outstanding. That is 121 days old or more. So I'm guessing that's probably all these ones from 2012, right? So maybe I should pay them. So again, just a nice way to get an idea of what's outstanding. It's important because you need to know, who needs to be paid. You don't want to obviously get into trouble with your vendors, and it gives you an idea of also how you should plan for your cash flow as well, right? Maybe you don't want to pay all the big ones right up front. Maybe you want to start paying some of these little ones, etc. Okay, but it gives you visibility into what's outstanding. This leads me to my last kind of report here, and that's the concept of being proactive reporting. That last scenario we talked about there for the vendor aging report, that's really about, a reactive report. We're being reactive because the vendor has called us, they've told us that we are delinquent on some invoices and we need to pay them, or they're possibly going to send us a dunning notice or demote our terms to maybe lesser terms. So what's proactive reporting? Instead of having, that trigger, which is a phone call from a vendor, to run that aging report, we should be looking at concepts of being proactive reporting. What I mean by that is you've got all of this data staying in SAP. Why not let the system do the work for you? Why not have an alert based on a query tell you which invoices are outstanding and are due today? So, for example, when you log into the system every morning, you should have that report waiting for you. You shouldn't have to wait until somebody tells you to run that report. So, for example, I've got you can see something here called AP invoices outstanding by days. All I've done was create a query. I wrote a query and I basically tied it to an alert. So every morning at 8 a.m. when I log into SAP, I get this report that tells me which invoices are outstanding, which vendor, the due date, the days outstanding, and the total total amount that's outstanding. So the concept behind this, guys, is, let the system do the work for you. Be proactive. You can set up these alerts very simply by going into administration, alerts management. If I go to the last one I created an alert, which basically notifies Jerwin every day at 8 a.m. And it's based off of a query that I wrote. So you double click on here. I search for the query. I want to link to the alert, right? Then I update that. And if I want, I can send not just an internal alert, but also an email, SMS, etc. Okay, so, and you can send that to X amount of employees in your company, so everybody's aware of what's outstanding. Maybe all the key accounts payable people in your company. Okay, so it's just a concept of enabling system to work for you by producing proactive reports. Okay. If you have a question, please feel free to reach out to myself or Rob, your other relationship manager in Western Canada, or any of your consultants, and we'll be happy to help you out.